March the 15th, 2026. Guys, a beautiful day here in central Mississippi. It's partly cloudy, windy. 71 feels like 76, supposed to get up to about 80 today. Now, what you got to realize is after midnight today, we're going to have severe weather because of a cold front moving into this warm, moist air. So be prepared for that, a cold front, then frost and freeze warnings coming in, guys. That's quite a drastic change from the 80s into freeze and frost warnings for in the morning into tomorrow. But after midnight here, this is just part of my job, it's going to get really bad. So look at your weather, and I'll probably do an update on it sometimes today, just a short one, to show you where the systems are. But look at the National Weather Service. Go there, and there's a link on our website if you don't have it, or type weather.gov, G-O-V, and you'll come right up on the map showing you where these frost and freeze warnings are coming in. And again, between now and then is going to be very severe weather, and because of the extreme temperature changes, that it could become very dangerous. Now, to the video that we're talking about, it's the Rosh, R-O-S-H, translation debate. It goes, to the Old Testament. They're saying it Ezekiel 38, in verse 2 and 3. It's the word in Hebrew is translated as R-O-S-H. Now, the problem with that, and many of us have made this mistake because it's easy to make this mistake. You're trying to be so careful and look at the different things in the Bible and make sure you get the translations correct. And but then you also have, you can easily overlook a translation because you've heard other teachers and some that are very popular say that Rosh is Russia, but that's a mistranslation. And Chuck Meisler, he was a very knowledgeable teacher, but he also said Rosh was Russia. But there's no factual basis on it. It was simply the connection between the possible pronunciations. It boils down to that. But the Russian view, again, in the New King James versions, treats Rosh as a proper noun, identifying it as a location that sounds like Russia. You understand what I'm saying? But the Turkey view, in which most modern Hebrew scholars and translations, such as the NIV, the ESV, and the JPS, translate Rosh as the common adjective for chief or head, not a place. In this reading, Gog is the chief prince of Meshech Tubal, not the prince of Rosh. Now, Meshech and Tubal are in Turkey. Okay? Now, as I dug into this a little deeper, it seems like up until about 200 years ago or so, this was pretty much worldwide knowledge, but it's over that 200-year period. We've seen a lot of other Bible changes also, but it's been kind of shifted towards Russia, but there's a reason for that. Turkey has a major alignment with the popes of Rome, and they have since the beginning almost. And they're always been papal friendly. And right now they're doing some things that really point to the Gog issue. We'll get there. But the Meshech and Tubal, which are Assyrian inscriptions such as those of Tiglath-Pileser, locate the Muski, Meshech, and Tabal Tubal in central and eastern Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. Magog, often linked to the ancient kingdom of Lydia in western Turkey, are the Scythians who lived in the region around the Black Sea, which includes parts of Turkey and the Caucasus Mountains, that region there. Gomer and Beth Togarmah, they are widely identified with the Cimmerians, and the city of Tegorama, both located in Anatolia, Turkey region. So you can go into this, guys, and I could go on for hours about the differences. But right now, just listen to what I'm saying, then do your research so the video doesn't get drawn out, because I'm going somewhere with this. But this should prove, or at least incite your interest into study a little bit different. And just look up, is Gog Russia or Turkey? You're going to find quite a bit of information. Anyway, just to break it down a little bit, you got the entity lined up on the left here, but you got Russian interpretation, and that's not Russia interpreting this. That's the people like Chuck Meisler and others that said this was Russia. Then the Turkey interpretation on the right, which goes along with the Hebrew scriptures. Gog and Magog in the Russian interpretation is northern superpower. So is Turkey, though. Turkey interpretation is Anatolian Turkey. Meshech, they're using the phonetic link. Is that from Moscow, guys? That's quite a reach. And Tubal, phonetic link to Tobolsk. Rosh, proper noun for Russia, Russia. None of those are really true. Again, Meshech, it's an ancient Muscite in central Turkey. Tubal is Tabal in eastern Turkey. And again, Rosh, they're calling Russia, is the common word for the chief or head. Okay? And Magog is the territory, basically. Also, Turkey. And so while the Russian theory remains popular in some prophecy circles, the Turkey identification is generally considered more grounded in historical archaeology and Hebrew grammar. That's important, and that's what we're going to do. Now, if you remember in the last video I did about Gog and Magog, we talked about all of the armies joined together coming from the north, right? And that they would come in peace and to restabilize a bad situation like mass casualties, but coming in the name of peace. Remember that. That's what we talked about. Turkey is currently navigating the Middle East conflict by maintaining a neutral stance, focusing on de-escalation and protecting its own borders while striving to remain outside the direct war. They're not using up their ammunition. Now, the U.S. has an air base there, and Turkey has always been friendly with a lot of the West, but their main loyalty is Rome. Anyway, our air base there, Turkey said we can use it but for defensive posture only. In other words, we can't attack anybody in the Middle East from that base in Turkey. It's a very large one, by the way. And I think I can get the point across and at least stir your interest in research for yourself if you want, by not making this a long video. But again, the diplomatic position of Turkey is telltale right now to me. Active neutrality. Ankara has criticized both the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran and Tehran's retaliatory attacks on Gulf states. Foreign Minister Hakeem Fidan is actively engaging in shuttle diplomacy with Washington, Tehran, and the Gulf capitals to push for a ceasefire. And before the war broke out, Turkey had attempted to mediate between the U.S. and Iran. It has now joined President Trump's Board of Peace as an opportunity to stop the war and has offered to provide troops for a potential internal stabilization force in Gaza. Gaza, guys, and that Turkey has a name for these troops. 2,000 they're preparing now. It's called the Gaza Brigade. To come into Israel, into Gaza, almost like peacekeepers. But that's not what's going to happen. We're already told. Now, President Erdogan, again of Turkey, has labeled Israel under Prime Minister Netanyahu as the greatest threat to regional stability, calling for a return to diplomacy before the entire region is thrown into fire. I think Turkey has very good knowledge of what thrown into the fire is about. Now, in Turkey, the air defense is on alert following the interception of 3 missiles, and that started about the first day of the conflict, believed to be from Iran, over Turkish airspace by NATO integrated systems. Turkey has placed its air defenses and institutions on high alert. Now, if you ask me, they were probably going after the U.S. base in Turkey, again, which is very large. And again, Ankara has explicitly stated that its airspace and military assets, including the Incirlik Air Base, that's the big one, are not to be used by the U.S. or Israel for offensive operations against Iran. In response to rising Mediterranean tensions, Turkey deployed 6 F-16 fighter jets to northern Cyprus to secure its interests. The armies are forming, maybe not for the reasons they think, but it's that hook in the jaw may not have been placed yet. But again, the Gaza Brigade is forming as a peacekeeping troop setup. You got jets, 6 F-16s in northern Cyprus. You know that's an island just off the Mediterranean coast from Israel in that area. Now, there's more to Turkey appearing or becoming the peacekeeper of the region, or supposed peacekeeper of the region, with other information, because land border crossings with Iran at Gubalak, Kapakoi, and Essadir remain open for Turkish and third country nationals fleeing the conflict. Buffer zones to manage a potential refugee crisis. The Turkish government has prepared plans for buffer zones and temporary housing along the border rather than maintaining its previous open door policy. You're not going to infiltrate all the way. We're going to leave you a little room here to get away from Iran or the mullahs, but we're going to keep you there. The U.S. Embassy in Turkey has designated areas near the Iran borders level 4. Do not travel, do not risk, due to the risk of armed conflict. And of course, we know about that, but again, what I'm showing you is that Turkey is now taking the place in the Middle East. It's the largest nation by far, as the peacekeeper and the role of peacekeeper. This is God. Now, as of today, Turkey has ruled out joining the military conflict against Israel at this stage, with President Recep Erdogan stating that his primary objective is to keep the country away from the pit of fire. While Ankara is not fighting, it has adopted a posture of hostile neutrality, combining several or severe diplomatic condemnations of Israel with defensive military preparations. Are you listening? We're so close, guys. And myself had just accepted, again, from TV preachers and teachers and the general assumptions over the last 200 years that Russia was the king of the north. But this changes everything. The Prince of Turkey. Okay? Guys, and I've got to bring up the Albert Pike letter just a moment about Israel was put there as a nation and all, but it would cause major conflict between the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews and things like that as a constant conflict, a burden. And that was on purpose. And then we look at people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who, like I said, are going crazy with their bombing in certain areas because they feel like they're under the umbrella of the U.S. But many people don't trust him. In that area, they don't trust him. And in these end times, we don't have very many good leaders. I don't care what nation you're in. Instead of offensive action, Turkey has placed all its institutions on high alert to protect its own territory. The armies are being prepared, and when they're being prepared to protect its own territory, they are prepared to move forward. This follows the successful interception of the 3 ballistic missiles launched from Iran that entered Turkish airspace earlier this month. And again, I think that was headed for our airbase. While avoiding direct combat, Turkey has implemented trade restrictions and airspace bans on Israeli military and government. Trade restrictions, airspace ban on the Israeli military and government aircraft. So, they're not friendly with Israel. They may have a real good reason. And Israel is expanding its bombing all the way across Lebanon now. Some areas that I have not seen much of the Hezbollah groups talked about being. Now, he may have his reason, but to me, I think we got demons infesting leaders, and we're being led to combat, and such extreme combat that it brings the world to what, again, Turkey's calling the pit of fire. Now, despite staying out of the fighting, the relations between Turkey and Tel Aviv are at an all-time low due to several flashpoints. Here we go. Syrian conflict. Foreign Minister Fidan recently criticized Israel for seizing land in southern Syria and striking military facilities there, accusing Israel of being after more land rather than security. But again, you have Hezbollah from Iran there, and they are attacking Israel from the north. Leadership hostility. Fadan stated that as long as Netanyahu remains in power, Israel will always identify somebody as an enemy to advance its own agenda. That's what I'm talking about. The demons have taken over. This world is rushing to conflict. Some Israeli figures, such as former Prime Minister Bennett, have warned that Turkey is the new Iran and represents an emerging threat that seeks to encircle Israel. It's such a big nation. We're going to look at the map. And then when you're putting F-16s in Cyprus, think about it. And then you're taking over, I don't know how much Turkey is involved with Iranians' proxies. I haven't seen any evidence of that at all. But what is the plan? Because Iran may be changing from the mullahs to a different administration, and that administration may be more friendly with Turkey. Now again, Turkey is currently a member of President Trump's Board of Peace and is using this platform to push for an immediate ceasefire. Turkey has offered, this is important, to provide troops for an international stabilization force in Gaza. Though this has faced opposition from the Israeli government, I'm sure it has, because again, you think Cyprus is close to Israel. Gaza is part of Israel, basically. They're right there together. So if you put Turkish troops there, especially the 2,000 called the Gaza Brigade, they are established. And then what will Israel do? If they attack Turkey troops or Turkish troops in Gaza or anywhere in that area, they're going to get the full wrath of Gog. They're also ensuring the conflict does not spill over into Turkey, and this remains the top priority, especially given concerns about Kurdish separate groups gaining influence in the region, causing a security vacuum. That's why I said that rulers in Iran are changing from the mullahs to the Kurdish separatist groups, and that will cause a vacuum. Anytime you change power, there's between the ruler that left and the ruler that comes in is a vacuum of power that many nations will try to fill for their own greed. So, again, they're going to be watching that, and I think when the Kurdish people move, that will be the trigger for two things, two very important things. We know that Trump has called for many nations now to bring their vessels into the Straits of Hormuz, through the Gulf of Oman into the Turkish or the Persian Gulf, and escort some of these oil tankers and supply vessels in and out. In other words, bring the entire world in here, and because the entire planet is getting oil from the area, and they should be helping. But now we've got an international stabilization force that wants to go into Gaza. You've got Turkey going to probably pull in the Kurds from Iran, and you are surrounding Israel at this point. We don't know what's going to happen with Lebanon and Syria, but it's heavily Turkish influence, especially once the Iranians lose, or the mullahs of Iranian, the Iranian Guard, lose their grip on some of these outlying groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, that group. So that's going to change. And what did Ezekiel say? Many nations and their friends will come into this war. It's not going to be Russia. I'm not saying Russia may not get involved, but that's not what the Bible's talking about. Now, Turkey has advanced air and missile defense. They've got Patriots. The U.S.-operated Patriot missile system has been deployed to the Malatya province to protect the critical NATO Kursk radar base. Again, we have Ursulik there. President Erdogan has officially activated national air defense operation centers to coordinate rapid response to any further airspace violations. Again, 3 missiles in there. Everybody, they are getting everything ready, though. The Turkish Air Force is conducting continuous combat patrols using F-16s to secure national airspace. And again, now they have 6 in Cyprus. The Turkish Navy, including the amphibious assault ship TCG Anadolu, is carrying out intensified reconnaissance and navigation activities in the eastern Mediterranean on the shores of Israel. They're saying while no massive military buildup has been observed directly on the Iranian border, precautionary measures are in place to handle potential second order effects of the war. And we were talking about the Kurds moving over and things like that. Let's take a look at that map. Again, guys, you can see here the Strait of Hormuz, Caspian Sea. Here's Russia over here. Saudi Arabia is here, but you got Iraq here and Iran here. Pretty large. See that? Here's Tehran right there at the bottom of the Caspian Sea. And what is their northern border? What do they all have in common? Turkey. Syria's northern border is Turkey. Iraq, Turkey. Iran, this border is Turkey. Now, do you understand who the kings of the north are? Now, we don't know who else will join in this. They talked about the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia and places like that. We don't know, but alone, just Turkey, with its interest in the people around the Middle East, are enough to bring all of this to fruition. But it looks like it will become a world conflict. We don't know yet, but what I wanted to do here was, again, point out the differences in what a lot of us have been told or that we just took for granted, and the actual truth, and then looking at the geology of it. And here, again, this is Lebanon, this is the West Bank, Israel, Gaza. So if you got 2,000 Turkish troops called the Gaza Brigade coming in here, that's kind of a strange name if you think about it, isn't it? Anyway, then you got here in Cyprus, Turkish F-16 fighters. You've got one of their largest ships out here in the eastern Mediterranean. They're watching, and of course they're watching for the ships, and the F-16s on Cyprus can be used to shoot down any incoming missiles from Iran into Turkey. Again, Turkey goes a long way. It's not just here, but it goes all the way over into, here's Greece, just to let you know, and all the 7 churches were here. And the one that Christ really got onto about the false prophets being there is the next message. And a lot of you guys are not going to be real happy about it because it's another video that shakes tradition. But when I do that, it's to wake you up, not make you mad. And what happens, guys, be honest. It's pulling the rug out from under someone, that effect, the comfort of that rug. Oh, they think I'm so well established that I'm ready. If the Lord comes now, then I'm ready for it. But what if you're established in not the truth? And you're looking in the wrong direction? And that a lot of the things, way more than what's in this video, you've been told are lies. And all of this needs to come out in these end times. We were told that would happen. Again, this is a lead up to another video that's just as important, but the second video is going to be attacked left and right. I already know it is, but that's not my job to worry about that. I've been told what my job is, and that's to try to teach the truth the best I know for these end times, because so much deception has been placed here for so many hundreds of years that people are comfortable with the lies. And Rome sent the greatest lie in history because they are the home of Satan through this entire land that we're looking at. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's going to take me a little time to do the other video, and as soon as I can do it, it'll be up maybe today. But we're watching it. Again, you watch it. And don't forget, thumbs up, subscribe, guys, and be safe.